Welcome, everyone, to Coaches Connect this week. I have the pleasure to be joined by Lauren. Lauren, I have no idea how to pronounce your last name. This is the remnant of working on the internet where you've seen the last name 10 times. How do I say it?
That's okay. It's deVane, like deVane in your arm. That's how I tell people, and they remember it
Oh,
that way.
that is good. Lauren deVane, who is, I just know you as AI Auntie. So why don't you tell us about who you are? Give us a little elevator spiel of your backstory and life
For
story.
sure. So, I'm Lauren deVane, and I am, like you just said, your AI auntie, and I've kind of branded myself as that more recently. But before I started getting into kind of the AI education space, I had a brand design studio where I was helping small businesses with their brand identities, so their logos, their colors, their fonts, what the vibe is. Um, and before that, I was actually the social media creative director at Ulta Beauty. So I was there at Ulta for about 6 years. And so I was really able to kind of get a really good understanding of what it takes to, build a brand on social media. And before that, I was working at Walgreens corporate for 5 years, where I was doing kind of anything and everything in the design space. I got my degree in graphic design in 2010. And so I've just kind of been at, those two places for the last decade. And then I left in 2021 to do my own thing. And that's what we're doing now. So now I've shifted into helping creators, creatives, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, freelancers, really anyone that's trying to kind of build their own brand, and helping them understand how you guys can be using AI tools, whether that's ChatGPT, other large language models, any of the there are new tools coming out every day. So just really trying to help people understand what the best tools for them are based on what they're trying to achieve.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And most of you know me. I'm Kate. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Precision Nutrition. I'm a master coach, and I have been bit by the AI bug hard. Probably sometime last year, just kind of when I realized the potential, I was very, very excited. And some of you have taken the AI boot camp, which is for Lauren's context, Precision Nutrition built and taught a course on how to use AI for coaches specifically. So this was an 8-week course. And as you can relate, I am sure we were building that plane as we were flying it
Yep.
because AI was changing every single week, right? Like the new tools, the new updates, the new features. So I got really excited about just application of AI to what I do. And I wanted to bring Lauren to speak with us today. So if you've been attending these Coaches Connect calls, I'm very passionate about bringing two kinds of people here for you guys. On one hand, people that work in the industry, right? Like somebody who kind of goes deep in a particular aspect of health and wellness. Maybe they are a strength coach specializing in something. Maybe they work with gluten intolerance or Hashimoto's. But I also really love bringing people from outside industries to see how we can use something in this industry. So that's really where I want to talk to Lauren about today. Like, how do we use AI tools in what we do? Because I think for the most part, people on this call are not going to have graphic design. I always thought of graphic design skills and like marketing skills as a little bit of a superpower. If you have it, and you're then running a business, it's really convenient to have those. But the reason I'm so excited about AI is because I have zero knowledge or skills or background in graphic design, in a lot of like the pretty imagery stuff that is often feels like it's required in like the today's world of business, whether you're creating a sales page or whether you're just creating graphics for social media. And that's where I wanted to tap into Lauren's brain today. Lauren, speak a little bit, like you don't only work with designers. So like when you talk about using AI in the fields outside of the graphic design, like what do you usually emphasize?
Yeah, when I first started getting into AI, it was because of the imagery. And I was like, this is so crazy what images, like how you can just go ahead and create images of whatever you want now. And so I immediately was like, I'm going to teach designers how they can be using it because that's really what I was doing. But as I was learning more about it, and then I started playing around with ChatGPT, which is a large language model separate from what a text to image model would be, I realized that, like, whoa, this is not just for designers. Like, using AI can be for anyone. And so when I actually ran my beta course last summer, I was dealing with the same issues where it was like I was teaching it live, and then a day later there was something new. And then a day later, after I taught them that, they had upgraded to something else. And so I realized how fast everything was moving, but that course was meant specifically for brand designers. And then I realized, like, no, this is just for anyone building a brand, right? Because now, as business owners, we have to do everything unless we decide, okay, we're going to hire and pay someone to create my content for me, or someone to make my website for me, or to do all these things. Whereas now we can actually use AI to supplement humans to do those things for us. And we can use AI to supplement not knowing about things, right? And so, like you had said, Kate, like, you didn't know too much about graphic design, but if you wanted to, you could easily go and use one of these large language models to teach yourself everything you need to know about it. And so it's not so much just a doing something for you, it's the ability to, like, learn how to do things that you don't already know how to do, or to have it automate things for you that you don't have time to do. So the biggest thing that I really want to talk to you guys about is thinking about how you can use AI to work smarter and not harder. And I know that's like such a cliche, but it's truly like what this technology is able to kind of gift us with, is that ability to decide what I feel like I'm very good at, and I don't necessarily need the help of AI, but maybe I'm not great at these other things. And that's where I'm going to say, okay, I personally am going to use it to help me write because I'm not the strongest writer. Whereas someone else might say, hey, I'm not this, like, I don't know how to create a social media strategy for myself, right? So that I'm going to use it to help me strategize and actually create and come up with the content that I'm going to post, right? And so it's not a one size fits all at all. Like, it's, you could, well, it is a one, is that right? Basically, anyone can use it any way that they want to use it, right? And so it's all about understanding what it's capable of and how to actually use it. Because I think the thing that people run into is they get excited about that these tools exist, and then they just jump in without really any sort of understanding of how it works or what it's capable of. And so, as you guys are nutrition coaches or fitness coaches, it's like if you just sent someone to the gym and said go, and then they didn't know any, like, they didn't really understand how they should be using the different machines, then they don't know what they don't know, right? And so they're missing out on a lot by not understanding what it can actually do. And so I think that's the other key, is really trying to educate yourself around what is possible with these tools.
I think today also, as you guys are tuning into this, I do want you to keep two things in mind, because on one hand, I want you to hang out and listen in and hopefully be inspired by a lot of the things that Lauren is doing and talking about, and we're both excited, and it's always very exciting to listen to people be excited about a thing. But I also want you to kind of keep maybe notes or little track of specific things that you can try yourself. So already there is one thing that Lauren said that I suggest you put in your little pocket. One of the applications of AI, of ChatGPT specifically, we're probably going to use AI and ChatGPT a little bit interchangeably today, just because ChatGPT tends to be like the multi-tool that is the like easiest tool to use. I see Lauren nodding, and especially I think a couple of weeks ago they have removed the need to create an account even. So it's very Google-esque in nature now, where like you can just pull it up as a website and use it. Like you don't even have to register for it. You can just play around with the free version. But learning a thing is one of the coolest applications for ChatGPT. Right? Like I hear coaches trying to figure out, like, how do I use ChatGPT to help me with media, social media strategy content? Amazing. It can do that. But you can also just simplify it and say, like, hey, teach me how to make sourdough bread. right? Just really like step by step. The dumb questions, I finally feel the freedom and liberty to ask, that I would like legit be embarrassed to ask anybody else this. I was sharing with my strength coach the way I use ChatGPT. He sends me a program. He sends me a new training block, right? And then I would have these questions about particular exercises that, I'll be honest, I'm kind of embarrassed to ask him. I'm embarrassed because I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I've been exercising and working out for 25 years. So, and I still don't remember what the frick is the difference between deadlift and Romanian thing, RDL, right? Like, so I'm still looking that shit up regularly. I would feel bad about messaging Will and say, what's the difference about the deadlift and the RDL? But ChatGPT doesn't care. So I pull up my training block and I literally go into ChatGPT and I ask questions. I say, hey, what's the difference between this and this? Remind me about the setup of this exercise. Oh, like what stance is this? Like what is the angle incline for this? And I just run through my training program with that like little question Q&A session. So to learn something, whatever that is, learn about a thing, learn about graphic design is one of the like really cool ways to use ChatGPT. Lauren, what have you learned? Like what have you used ChatGPT to like learn about lately?
I mean, I created a course, so that was like a big piece of it was like, how do I create a course that is going to get people to actually want to go through it? How do I promote a course, right? How do I, but like, even just outside of like that sort of thing, it's like, how do I'll take out, this is my favorite way to use it. And this is, well, it's not my favorite way. I have tons of ways. But if you have the paid version of ChatGPT, you can upload files and images and take pictures of things. So I'll use it and I'll pull out, the pot stickers that I got from Trader Joe's. And on the back, it tells me how I can make them by steaming them, or how I can make them by boiling them, or how I can make them by frying them. But I want to know how I make them in the air fryer. So I just take a picture of the back of the thing and say, how can I make these in the air fryer? And it says, okay, well, you should put it at this degrees for this long. Make sure you flip them in between. Where it's like, otherwise, I have to go in and like go to Google and try and be like, what, like how long, and then sort through all these different websites that are maybe going to have the information, maybe not. I'm going to have to sort through all that bullshit copy at the top that makes the website be SEO friendly, and that's the only reason it's there. And then it takes me through all these ads, and it's like, it's just so much faster to get to an answer about anything. And that's the other thing too, is like you said that your trainer would send you these blocks. Like I love to use it to just, I'll take screenshots of things that I'm working on and give it to ChatGPT and say, can you review this? Can you provide me feedback on it? Right. So for you guys, I think one of the coolest parts about ChatGPT is that you can really have it act as anyone. So if I wanted to, I could say, hey, please act as a nutritionist and a trainer and ask me questions about my lifestyle. And it would be able to then ask me questions and then put together like a little bit of a workout for me and a meal list. You guys can be doing this. Like, so yes, I can do that, but I don't know how accurate it is, right? I don't know if it's really the right thing for me, but you guys, as the experts, know that. And so what I truly feel is if you are an expert in something and you start using AI, you are just going to be that much better. And people are going to want to work with you because they understand that you are using this new technology, right? No one wants to work with people that are just like, man, no thanks. Like, I don't like to move forward. I don't like to be future thinking. Like, no, they want to be like, oh, you're going to be able to help me. Show me these ways you're using AI to help me, right? Because I think in your space, it doesn't, like in my space, there's a lot of hate around AI art and how you're not really an artist if you use it. But for you guys, I mean, I think you guys are a great example of how you guys can be using it to show your clients and your customers how much more value you can add to them, right? So in something, just an easy, quick thing, right? It's like maybe they don't have access to you all the time. You don't want to give your clients access to you all the time. That would be crazy. But if you were to create a little custom chat bot that is trained on all the information that you've already talked to them about, that's trained on their specific information, right? and the training that you've put together for them, the list of foods that they should be eating, then they can just go and chat with that bot, and it's going to be able to have your knowledge and their knowledge, and then it's going to basically kind of supplement you for them. And so if you can provide that to your customers and your clients outside of, to be able to say like, hey, if you can't get a hold of me, you can go and talk to your chatbot, and it's going to be able to hopefully help you in the same ways that I would be able to help you with, right? So there's just so many different ways that you can be using it. I don't know if
I'm
that answered your
curious.
question. I'm sure I went totally off on a tangent.
We'll do that a lot because we're excited. I'm curious about folks on the call. Feel free to like raise your hand or just pop in the chat. What is your familiarity with any AI tools? Have never used them, heard it's a thing that exists, use it every day, tried to use it and didn't really know what to do with it. And Lauren, I kind of have this sense that one of the stumbling blocks for folks is kind of figuring out how to use a thing. Like everyone's like, "Oh my God, are you using AI to help you with your social media copy?" And everyone's like, "Oh my God, AI can help me with social media copy. I want to do that." But then we sort of suffer from the blank page syndrome, right? Like imagine it's pulling up Google and not knowing what to put in the search. Like, what am I even looking for?
Totally.
So I pull up ChatGPT, and I remember distinctly my very first experience with ChatGPT. I heard about this thing and how it could just do everything. And I went in, Lauren's gonna laugh. I made it write a limerick about protein, and it did. And then I wasn't really sure where to go from there, right? Like, okay, that's cute. I don't think I could write a limerick about protein. That was it. That's where it ended, right? Like, I
Yep.
just didn't know where to take that further. Lauren, do you hear that a lot?
Yeah. And I think that's why I think that, understanding how it works, like it isn't Google. I think we're very conditioned to believe like the way that we work with Google is we put in one question and then we get a bunch of like websites back that we have to sort through. And it's like, and this wasn't it. Like, I'm just going to kind of be done with this because I didn't get what I wanted. Whereas with ChatGPT or any of these large language models, they've put them in this sort of chat format so that you can go back and forth with it. I really want you guys to like think about this less of like a robot and more of as if you had an assistant or an employee working for you, right? And talking to it truly as if you're just talking to a person. So when I'm working with it, it'll give me something. I'll be like, no, that's not right. Like, I need you to fix this. And so it's all about understanding, giving it that information that it needs. Because I think a lot of people, one of the things that they run into is they put in like, help me make a content strategy, right? And that's what they put in. And it's like it spits back something very vague and generic because it doesn't know anything about you. What do you want it like? What it's going to just go with like the most broad information because large language models are trained on, they have a data set and it's basically gone and looked at all of the text on the internet, the books, there's articles, there's forums, that it's basically gobbled up all of that information and now has that to reference. And so if it doesn't have specifics in the prompt and you don't tell it, hey, I'm a nutritionist and my clients are these types of people and I'm looking for a content strategy for Instagram for the next month, like it's only going to be able to just be like generic, here's a content strategy. On Mondays, you should do a win. On Tuesdays, you should do a quote. Like it doesn't have enough to go off of. But when you give it more of that context, it's going to say, okay, I understand what you do. I understand who you're trying to talk to. I understand that you want it for this channel. And I understand that you want it for this month. I'm going to be able to give you a lot better of a response because you've given me more detail to go off of. So something that people say is like shit in, shit out. Like you're not going to get much when you don't give it the good stuff. But when you give it that good stuff, that's when you're going to start seeing incredible results. And that's when you're going to be able to say like, okay, this is really great starting point, but I don't love this idea for Mondays. Can we think of 3 different ideas that we could do for Mondays that are more focused on like legwork or whatever it is? And so it's like, okay, now we're going to shift. Now we're going to get it closer to what you want, right? And it's not, you don't have to just take what it gives you the first time as like, okay, that's it. You could even regenerate it, because every time that it's giving you an output, it's an original output. And it's kind of wild. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, I actually just posted a carousel today about how it kind of works, but it's basically a very, very large autocomplete. So it's just deciding like what is the next word that should come based on what I've seen in my massive data training set. So it understands what words make sense together based on what it knows. And so every time you generate, it's going to give you something completely different because it's original outputs every time.
Yeah, and I think, Lauren, one of the biggest things that we kind of hear, right, is that like I tried using it, and you can pop in the chat, take a look. Like we have a continuum of folks who have never used it to like, I used to work as a prompt engineer, right? Like that is a big range of experience, but very commonly it's this like, I used it, but I was like, what I was getting wasn't super helpful. It was vague. It was generic. I walked one client who was a personal trainer through an example, because what she was saying, she was trying to get ChatGPT to give her a strength training program, like a 4 week strength training program. And she said, like, I don't know, I'm just getting this like generic stuff. It's just crappy. And I said, well, what did you ask for? She said, I asked for a 4 week strength training program. So did you get a 4 week strength training program? Yes. Okay, cool. So I want you to imagine, we don't want to treat AI too much as humans, right? It's problematic in its own way, but let's just go with it for a moment because I have a point, I swear. We're going to pretend that ChatGPT is your human assistant, right? So I want you to pretend if you were to hire a human assistant coach. Her name is Susan. We just hired Susan. Susan is your assistant coach who's going to take over your programming for you. Susan doesn't really know anything about you. She's a brand new employee. Like she really wants to be helpful. And you tell her, Susan, I want you to write me a 4 week strength training program. That's all the information that Susan has. Susan is going to do her damnedest, right? Like she's going to give you a 4 week strength training program. Is it going to be a really good strength training program? I highly doubt it. So if you were to keep Susan in mind, what would you want to tell her? What kind of feedback, context, background would you want to tell her? Because if you said, Susan, I have this client that I want you to write a strength training program for. She's a mom, 3 months postpartum. She has a knee injury. She doesn't like these movements. I want you to make sure her warm up includes a spin bike because that's what she has in her basement. Now give me a 4 week strength training program. Susan would be able to do a much better job, and so would ChatGPT. Right? So
Me
can
too.
we
I'm going to
go
put you
ahead?
on.
Oh, yeah, all good. I'm just popping into the chat here. Yeah, so huge range of the kind of experiences, again, like getting some generic content out. And Andrew is saying how important it is to know how to prompt so you preserve your unique voice and don't get generic content out. So feel free to use the chat to pop in any questions or like kind of scenarios, anything that you're trying to maybe figure out how to do with ChatGPT or any other AI tools. And I'm just going to pause here to take a look. Folks are saying use it daily, using it a lot, using it as a thought partner. It's like having a virtual VA. Yeah, having it like a virtual VA. One of the things that, like Lauren was talking about in the introduction, is using it with a lot of business owners, and especially if you are a solopreneur, if you are like the one man or one woman show who's sort of doing all the things. One of the specifics that blows me away about some of the AI tools and what they're able to do is that I distinctly remember paying for these things, like paying for these tasks to specific people. I have hired people on an hourly basis so they would type up my podcast appearances so I would have a transcript. I would hire somebody and pay them like 10, 15, $20 an hour. So they would listen to the podcast and type it up word for word. So I would actually have like a transcript. Now I can get it done with an AI tool in 30 seconds, or I can have it done live as it's happening. Think of like that being one specific task. Lauren, what are some of the other things that like you could totally see business owners like having paid money for, even months or a couple years ago?
I mean, all of the things. Like, I think what you were talking about with having it transcribe your podcast, like, there are tools now, like one that I love is Cast Magic, and it could transcribe. So basically, what happens is you can take any sort of audio or video, whether that's a coaching call that you had with a client, and input it into Cast Magic, and it's going to transcribe the whole thing for you. But then, based on what it is, so whether it's a podcast or a coaching call or a course video, you can kind of determine and tell it what it is, and it's going to automatically spit out all of this content for you. So if you have a coaching call, it's going to go ahead and be able to find like the top things that you guys talked about and break it down in a really easy to follow format. And then it basically gives you an option to chat with it as well. So you can literally have conversations your with your call with your client to say like, all right, what were those things? Like, the thing that it's good at is finding these patterns, right? And so you can basically say like, what are these things that she's struggling with on a regular basis based on it, like looking at all those calls. And so just having it do things like that, I think talking about, web copy, having it write copy for you, whether that's for your website, whether that's for your social media, people will hire copywriters. But now you can, if you understand how to work with ChatGPT or any of the large language models, you can be having it write for you. I think I discovered this other tool the other day called Sunno.ai that will literally write and produce full songs in like 30 seconds.
Insane.
And they're like good songs. And while I know that's probably not something that's super necessary for you guys, imagine like marketing companies where it's like, okay, they need to come up with like jingles for something. And it's, you're able to like iterate. And that's what I love the most is like you can rapidly iterate and test things now because you can do things at such a quicker pace. So you could be playing around with a content strategy. Maybe you're realizing it's not working. Boom, let's go and get into ChatGPT again and come up with something else. Let's explain to it, I don't feel like it's working. Here are the problems that I'm seeing with it. Can you give me a new one? And then boom, you're able to start trying something new. So I think the rapid iteration is a huge piece of it too.
With Suno, I think like Suno is a text to music tool, let's just say, right? Like, so it writes songs on the spot. And while there might not be a direct application, but for example, like, so I run a group coaching program once a year for folks that struggle with winter. So, and as I was playing with Suno, I asked for it to write me a song that describes struggling with winter and then finding little upsides about winter. And it like wrote this thing about bouncing through the winter and enjoying the snow, and it was the cutest thing. And I think a lot of it is just like maybe finding opportunities to have fun as well. Like a lot of it is just so much fun, like just to um explore your creativity in a ways that you never thought was possible. Like I'm not a songwriter, I'm not a musician, I'm not a graphic designer. So for me to be able to all of a sudden explore the visual arts through words is amazing, or to be able to explore generating songs and music through words is really, really cool. We have a couple of questions in the chat. So Michael
Yep.
is asking, how do you recommend using it to start a blog that would benefit my coaching?
So, so many ways you can go in there and basically tell it like, hey, I am a fitness coach and these are the types of clients that I have. And I would love to start a blog to help me either educate my current clients and to also bring in new clients, right? Like, and so by telling it, hey, I want this to be for new clients as well as as existing clients, right? That's going to help it understand like, okay, when we're writing these blog posts, I should also be thinking about ways to like get new clients. And so maybe that's whether it's using proper words using for SEO in order to get more views on it, right? And so you can tell it like, I want to talk about these XYZ things, or you can say, give me some ideas for content that I should be writing, right? And so it'll be able to give you ideas for blog posts. It can even write the blog posts for you. Now, if you're not giving it direction on your voice and tone, it's going to sound very robotic, and it's going to use words, like I said, the post that I posted today on my Instagram will show you some of the words. If you guys start seeing, and you're going to see it now, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see it everywhere, but unlock, unleash, trailblazer, game changer, delve. If you see that and stuff, it's most likely, at least now, it's most likely they're using ChatGPT and they're not really understanding that they need to kind of edit it a little bit more to make it sound more like their own voice. And they also probably don't realize that it's happened, like that is what is happening. And so in their mind, they're like, oh, this is great. And I think with the free version of ChatGPT, you're going to get a lot more of that too, because the free version is not quite as creative as the paid version. But there are other large language models too, like Claude. I saw somebody else asked about Bard or Gemini. That's Google's. Facebook is about to release their Llama 3 model. So there's a lot of different models that you can actually use. But I think that did I forget what the question was? Did I answer the question? Oh yeah, using it for the blog post. I think that with Claude, and I've seen a couple people talking more about it, and I haven't played too much with it. They're saying that Claude is pretty good at, if you've got a sample of your own writing, a couple of samples of your own writing, and you provide it with those samples and then say, hey, I'd like you to write a blog post about, you know, I don't know, sit-ups, I don't know, whatever you guys want to have it, write a blog post about, it's going to be able to replicate very similarly the style of what you fed it, where you can do the same thing in ChatGPT. You can also give ChatGPT more direction on, hey, I want you to use a friendly voice, but I want it to be authoritative, and I want to make sure that you're speaking to this audience. It will write it in that format. But then it's going to be on you to then go ahead and take a look at this blog post and be like, does this make sense? Does this sound like I wrote it? Does this, right? And so you as the human are still in charge. Like this thing can't really do much without you. And so it's still on, the onus is on you to make sure that what you're putting out there feels authentic to your own voice and your own business. Otherwise, people are going to start feeling like it's kind of fake, right? And while yes, I absolutely encourage you to use it to help you write, I think you don't want people to feel like you're just, ripping off what ChatGPT wrote. You want to make sure that the authority is coming through while also feeling like it's coming from you.
Yeah, and you notice what one of the things Lauren talks about is using it to help you with where you struggle. So if you don't struggle with writing, if you actually enjoy writing, or like you are a creative writer, then you might not need ChatGPT to ideate or write for you. So I really like writing. I'm good at it, right? Like, so I don't particularly need ideas. Like I have ideas coming out of my ears. But where I use ChatGPT is to help me streamline and edit and revise and find where things don't make sense. And then I tighten my writing. Like it gets better. Like, where is this confusing? What would you add? Or ask me open-ended questions that I can answer that would allow me to add some detail to the story. Give me
Yep.
some ideas of the personal stories I can include, right? Do you hear how I'm using the tool to make the piece of writing even more personal rather
Yep.
than less personal, right? So it's really what you're going to do with the tool. And I think with the blog, right, like keep in mind again that my little hack of imagining a human assistant, because just like you're not going to say, hey, Susan, can you start a blog for me? Because that's not super helpful. what would you ask if you had a copywriter in front of you, if you had a writer in front of you, if you had a professional blog creator in front of you? What would you ask them? What kind of conversation would you have? Can you sit down and have a 30-minute back and forth exchange with a bot where you actually are imagining yourself having this conversation, right? It's the back and forth that I really find very valuable. It's like ask me questions and have that ongoing conversation. I think it was
Yeah,
Tony
and
who was wondering. Go ahead, Lauren.
I just want to add into that. I think understanding that it can act as anyone. So once you do write something, you could go ahead and feed it that and say, act as the person that, like my audience that would be writing it, and give me questions that they might have, right? And so from those questions, that could spin off multiple more blog posts, right? So using it to get feedback as if it is your clients, and then being able to create content based on what those questions or thoughts or concerns might be, right? So I like to even create like little ideal client personas of like, here is, here's who my audience is, these like really detailed, like what are the demographics, what are the psychographics, what are the things that they're concerned about, their fears, their goals, and then using those to have it really help me tailor the content to those people. And I think that's honestly, I think that's one of the greatest things about this is it everyone thinks like, oh, it's not personal. It's like it can be hyper personalized. And that's what's so cool about it, right?
So Tony was wondering what are the best tools to use for AI graphics or images. I have to say, in the last 6 months, my two best performing Instagram posts have all used AI generated images. Just, just thought I would
Just
throw
an
that
just an aside.
out, just as an
Um,
aside. Lauren, go ahead. What are your favorites?
I mean, there's a lot of them, and all of them are always getting better. Um, Dolly 3 exists inside of the paid version of ChatGPT. It also exists in Bing Image Creator for free. So if you don't have a ChatGPT Plus account, which I do highly suggest it, I just think you're going to get far better outputs if you're using it, but the free version does exist too. So Dolly's really great at it can nail like text. It can do text really well. And just in the last week, they have added the ability to edit the images. So before you would get an image, it would be a great image, but the text on it would be like wrong. And you'd be like, no, change the text to this. And it would give you an entirely new image. And you're like, no, wait, I liked the image that I had before. I just needed new text. Now it's basically called in painting, and you can just select the section of the image and edit it and say, change the text to this. So Dolly is really great at nailing text, but it's not as photorealistic. So if you're looking for more photorealism in your images, I don't necessarily think Dolly is the right place. But if you're like doing more of like maybe you have like a comic style vibe, or maybe you've got more of like a coloring book style vibe. Like if you want to like kind of create a style for yourself, then you can then Dolly is a great place. Now, Midjourney is my go-to. I love it. And currently, it's not super accessible because unless you are on Discord, which is a chat platform, and you understand like how Discord works, it's a little bit harder of like an entry point. However, they have a website that they're working on. I've had access to it since December, and it's streamlined the process and makes it so simple. And so once that is launched to the public, I think we're going to have a lot more people using Midjourney. They've also gotten better at text recently and following longer prompts. Kate, I saw you said ideogram. That's another great one. Modify is also an awesome one. That one allows you, if you do, I don't know that many of you guys have a lot of like design experience, but it's almost like an image generator, Photoshop, and animation, like all in one. And then Leonardo.ai is another one. They're based out of Australia, and they use Stable Diffusion as kind of underneath the hood, but they've made it a little bit more simpler of a user interface for people to use. And that, I think, it does a pretty good job of like getting consistent characters. So if there was maybe a character that you wanted to use that was maybe a version of yourself, that maybe wasn't exactly photorealistic, but it was like clear that it was like you and it was like your digital version or whatever that you wanted to use to be able to like create images, and then you could put your quotes or whatever you wanted. Leonardo is a good one. Visual Electric, you mentioned, is a really good one too. There's just so many, and they all have kind of their pros and cons. But I think if you are just kind of just starting out, I think that Dolly is probably a pretty simple one, and Ideogram is a pretty simple one.
Yeah, and I mean, consider also, so like when people ask questions like which software do I use or which payment processor do I use, there's going to be dozens, if not hundreds of options. So it's really kind of would depend on where you at, because if you're just starting out, it kind of doesn't matter. Just pick PayPal, right? Or Stripe. So just similarly, like if you're just starting out, it doesn't matter. Just pick ChatGPT. It's just like it's the lowest barrier to entry. Tony.
I will say for that though, with Dolly, it is a little bit frustrating because there's no like library of all of the images that you've created. When you use Dolly, it's basically just like the images stay in the individual chat conversations that you have. And so you got to kind of like download everything as you're creating it and put it somewhere. Whereas with most of the other ones, you kind of can go back and be able to see like, here are all of the images that I've ever made. So that is a downfall of Dolly. But I do think like if you're just starting
Tony, go
out,
ahead. I thought I saw you on mute.
Yeah, can you upload images and then manipulate those images in which tool? So like say if I have
you
like
can
I have had like I've created some image and I want to change like the font or maybe the image inside. Are all of them which ones can I upload and then manipulate inside the interface?
I would say none of the, I mean, Leonardo can basically take one, but honestly, Canva is really great for being able to edit. So, like, if you create that image, right, and the text was wrong, what's really cool about Canva's AI is when you bring it into Canva, they have something called text grab, and it will take the text that was in your image and turn it into live editable text that you can then change the font to and everything. And then it'll put like a new background where that text was. So that's like a really powerful one. And then same with Canva's like editable features. Like if there's small things that you want to change, like maybe the foot looks weird, or you want to change it to like different barbells or something, you can basically select that little portion and then type in what your new prompt would be. And Adobe Photoshop also, if you have Photoshop, has generative fill capabilities and generative properties that will also be able to do that for you. But if you're looking for something to be able to like take an image and then like recreate it in a different style, Midjourney and Leonardo can do those, can do more of that.
Audrey is wondering, and I think she's not alone, can you briefly explain how to create a ChatGPT bot? Or
Yeah.
do I just ask ChatGPT? That's good thinking. Yes, you can, but I'm sure Lauren can speak to that a little bit.
You can. So if you are, if you're on the if you're on the free version, asking ChatGPT is probably not going to be a good answer because its cutoff of data is pretty, it's like 2 years old at this point. And so it doesn't necessarily have information that custom GPT bots are even a thing yet. And that's another downfall of the free version is anything that's happened in the last 2 years, it doesn't have any like knowledge of. Whereas with the free version, it can go out to the internet and get newer information, and the cutoff date for it is a lot more recent. But if you have the paid version of ChatGPT, there is an option down in the settings, or you can just go to explore GPTs over on the side, but it'll say like my GPTs, and you'll go click into there and you'll just say like create a new GPT. And it actually will kind of walk you through it. It'll say like, hey, what do you want this thing to do? And then you'll answer it and it'll be like, okay, here's an image that we made for it. Do you like it? And you'll be like, yeah. And it'll be like, okay, so like, what is the goal? What are we trying to solve here? And you can basically tell it, hey, I'm trying to create a custom GPT that is going to help my nutrition clients. And I want it to be able to give them recipe ideas, and I want it to be able to give them their workout routines, and basically just tell it all this information. And then it's going to build this bot, and then you'll basically click over to configure, and that's where it's going to kind of summarize what you had just talked about in that conversation of what the bot should do. But you can go in and change it up, and you can, get it a little bit clearer. You can tell it the voice and tone you want it to talk in. So if there's something that you call your clients all the time or something, you can have it refer to them as such. You can upload documents to it. So if you have, if you're making them for your individual clients, you could say like, here is their information, here is what we talked about, like, and it has that to go and actually reference. And then you can basically just send the link to your clients, and then they have access to use it, and it's going to be able to kind of have this back and forth with them. There's obviously more to it, but I mean, not a ton more, but that's really the gist of just how simple it is to create them within ChatGPT. There are other tools that allow you to create bots. So you'll see like chat bots on different websites and stuff. So say you wanted to put one on your website so that when people came to it, if they had questions, they could just chat with the bot, and it would have all of the knowledge about, what it requires to work with you, things like that, so that maybe you're cutting out those like calls with people before maybe they start working with you. I think probably with you guys, you'd want to have face-to-face calls with these clients beforehand. But I think there's just so much value in chatbots in all sorts of different ways. Like I have my course, Basecamp, and I've created a bot that is trained on all the information that's in the course so that people can go and ask it questions. And it's going to then be able to respond as if it were knowledge that I would have given them because the course was created by me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Lauren, I think one of my favorite examples that you used to kind of describe bots, because I felt it was so easy to grasp, was the time you created a custom bot for a trip. And I have played with that since, because if you think of a bot, like it's essentially a chat GPT that exists in its own separate universe with a custom knowledge base that you give it.
Yep.
So the trip, and I've played with that since, Lauren, inspired by you. Like if you had a big trip coming up, you can literally have your like Mexico trip chat GPT where you can upload your itineraries, your hotel information, any information you have about that trip with the dates. And then you can actually work with the bot to work out the itinerary that would fit the like when you are there, where you are there. Like you can kind of say like, hey, well, I'm going with 2 kids under 6, so please don't offer, strip clubs and nightclubs as entertainment options, right? Like I am there in April, so don't mention Christmas stuff, right? Like, but that creates like this bot with this like kind of contained specialty. I thought that was a fun one.
Yeah, and the way, so I mean, using it to actually help you plan your trip is one thing. But yeah, my ex, his parents went to Finland and Norway for a trip, and they had the whole thing planned for them by a travel agent. And she gave them like an 80-page PDF. And I was like, you guys are gonna have to like flip through this every day to like figure out what's going on. I was like, give me that PDF. And so I just fed it to a custom GPT and said, hey, you are their travel partner. When they ask you questions, like you should respond like this, give them extra information depending on what they're asking about. If you can give them some words that they would maybe want to use that are in the native language so that they're able to maybe communicate a little bit better. And so every day they would just wake up and be like, what's on the itinerary? What do we have to do? And they'll be like, okay, you're doing this. The temperature is this right now. So you guys should dress like this. Make sure you're showing up to the bus at this time, because all the information was already there, and it just was able to go and access it in a way easier way than you would be able to, and flipping through 80 pages. It just makes it so simple. And
Well,
like,
Angie's saying, I love the idea of using it for individual clients or to answer repetitive questions. I think that's a really cool application. So, like Lauren, I'm actually thinking like as a coach, as a personal trainer, like you could create a custom bot for every single one of your one-on-one clients. Like I could have a Lauren ChatGPT where if Lauren and I were working together, that's where I would upload her
yep,
intake, her DEXA scan, her like in-body results, and then that bot would have that information. So Lauren would have access to it throughout our work together, and she could go in and say, hey, I just got my in-body and it's this. How does this compare with my original measurements? And it can refer to the knowledge base that it has and say, well, on February 1st, your first in-body shows that you were here and now you're there. That represents the 2%. Like, and you could actually have that in human language rather than having now to pull up multiple files. And you notice that same bot could have access to Lauren's training program, to
Yep.
Lauren's food logs. So it's all like self-contained
And
knowledge
that's
base.
what it's so good at, is recognizing and finding those patterns. So I mean, with you guys, that's literally what you're trying to solve for these people, is to get them from A to B. And it's like, well, how can we, like, based on that, how can you find during that process, like, the ways that we can improve it? And like, when you ask it, like, how can we do this faster? How can we change this in a way that's going to see results of XYZ? And it's going to come up if you tell it to act as if it is a trainer. And I saw somebody asking about, like, when is this going to kind of take over for trainers? Because, right, and I don't think it's going to. I think there are people that are always going to want an expert, whether this robot can do it or not. Like, yeah, maybe, sure, if I'm not that serious about it, I'll go and have it create a thing for me. But if I'm serious about it, I'm going to go and pay someone to help me. And I'm going to pay someone that knows how to use AI at the same time, right? Because I know that what I'm going to get out of them is going to be a lot better. I just saw somebody
In
said, can you
mind,
duplicate them?
I think in terms of also like whether they are serious about it or not, notice that that challenge is not new. Because if the clients did not want to pay a coach for a customized workout program, they could pull a workout program from the internet
Right.
for a decade and a half before that, right? Or before that, there would be a training program in Cosmo. Would it be a good training program? Not necessarily. Would it be a training program specific to their goals? No. So can clients go into ChatGPT right now and get a training program for themselves? Yes, of course. But that's always been available, right? Like the generic templated non-specific training programs, meal plans, etc., have always been available.
I just saw Charles' question about duplicating chat GPTs. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know if you can just say, like, duplicate, but you can very easily just go in and copy and paste the information that you had for that specific one and then change it up per client if you're thinking about that. And then that way you're just like uploading each individual client's data into it. And then the other thing too that I think people have some concern about, that I want to just make sure that I cover off on, is the training data. So if you have IP and you're not necessarily like, hey, I don't feel comfortable that I'm like sharing this information with this bot for it to train on, you can actually request OpenAI not train on your data. And I will drop the link to that, like, request form for you guys. And it literally is just like you just tell it like your email address, and it will say like, okay, thanks for the request. And then you'll get an email like a couple minutes later that says like, all right, your request has been, oh, I just sent that not to everyone. Hold on. Your request has been completed. And that means that anything you put into your ChatGPT, any files or anything like that, any information, it's not going to train. So it's not learning on any of that information. I think a lot of people, before it was like only enterprise that could have it kind of like not train. And now there is this ability to be able to not have it train on your data. Because I think
Yeah,
some people get worried about that, is like, oh, that's personal information. It's like, yeah, for sure.
I think that is a very legitimate concern, but one of the things also I kind of, to beat the dead horse over the head a little bit, it's not a new concern, right? Because people who are kind of wondering, like, what is ChatGPT doing with my information, are sometimes the same people who have the previous night typed in, is it normal to hate my husband, into Google, right? And it's like, what are you putting into Google? What kind of photos have you been posting on Instagram and Facebook? Like, that idea of digital privacy and what we share on the internet is a very real thing that we must approach intentionally. It's not new with AI. So, as always, we kind of use the description where we're probably not going to be uploading our social insurance information into ChatGPT. Don't necessarily upload your bank statements in there quite yet, right? Like, don't maybe use your real names of clients in there, right? But again, like that's been the case before
Yeah.
as well. Andrew says, I've heard people using it for book summaries as well. I mean, anytime you have a large, like body of text, like this is a great way to, like, you can chat with a research article. Did,
Yeah.
here's a research article that is 30 pages. How many people were in the study? What were the conclusions? And you can actually have that kind of back based on the document that you've uploaded.
Have it summarizing stuff, things that you don't maybe understand. And you're like, can you explain this to me like I'm 10 or however old? And it'll break it down in something that makes it a lot easier to understand. I've used it in a really fun way. I asked it to give me the key points of what is the habit book?
Oh, Atomic
They
Habits.
Yeah, Atomic Habits. I was like, can you summarize Atomic Habits and then tell me how I can use the key takeaways in my own business? And because in my custom instructions, I've told it, like, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's who my audience is, I have ADHD, like all these things about me, it was able to go ahead and take that book, take the key takeaways from Atomic Habits, and then tell me how to actually implement them in my own day to day. It's truly wild, you guys. Like anything, and I feel like everyone's like, oh, I've heard of someone doing this, I've heard of someone doing this. If you can think of whatever that question would be, or like if you have an idea, like just think about how you would say it to like a person and try and get it to do that. Like it's all about how you ask the questions, giving it those details, and really just having it kind of do whatever you want it to do for you.
I want to be cognizant of Lauren's time, but I shared Lauren's Instagram handle in the chat, and honestly, I would say definitely follow Lauren because she shares hacks, strategies. I think like most of the things I probably know about ChatGPT, I learned from Lauren. It's super applicable. I very often would see her do something and then I would like go and try it, just like I told you with the bot and the trip. I was like, well, that's a good idea. I've never thought about doing that. So definitely find her there. And Lauren, can you tell us a little bit about Basecamp as to what that is? And I also think you have like a free community that folks can join.
Yep. So I just dropped the link to the Launchpad, which is the free community. And that's on a tool or a platform called School. And what's cool about it is it's like a Facebook group where you can come and share and say like how you're using the tools, share your work, ask questions to other people in there. But what's cool is it's where I actually host my course, which is called Basecamp. And Basecamp basically will give you everything you need to know about how to use ChatGPT to help you build your brand. And it's really kind of soup to nuts of like how do large language models work. I have a lawyer come in and talk about the legal side of things and just like the ethical considerations and privacy and things like that. And then we go over like how to actually use the tool, how to get it set up on mobile, how to prompt properly, how to get your custom instructions set up, and then just like a bunch of different use cases. But in the free community, there's actually the ability to, it's gamified, which I loved about it. And that's why I actually chose School. So if you're sharing in the community and you're, commenting, when people like your comments, you get a point. And so as you gain points, you can actually like level up and unlock content. So I've got lessons that are in my paid course that are unlockable if you are, participating. Kate's unlocked probably the most of everyone. um but it's really cool. I think I dropped the link to Basecamp as well as the Launchpad, and then obviously Instagram. I try and share plenty of information on there as well. But really, I think you guys, just the biggest takeaway from this, I hope, is that like using it is just an extension of you. It's not replacing you. It is really just helping you be able to work in the places you want to work, right? Like have it do the shit that you don't want to work on and be able to spend time doing the stuff you do or the stuff that you don't understand as much. It's really just how you use it.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Lauren, for your time. If you guys love this, if you have any questions, find me, find Lauren, and let's get AI to do some boring stuff that we don't want to do, or
You know
help us.
what? Actually, I have one more thing if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. I want to give you guys access to my custom GPT bot Muse that'll kind of help you with like building your brand, potentially strategizing around it, coming up with some things around that. It's more specific to branding, but I think it could be helpful if you know, I believe as someone that used to do branding, that your brand is really important, and I'm of course not going to be able to find the link to it.
Lauren, if you find the link, get it to me and I'll make sure I get
Okay,
it.
perfect.
And we have a whole bunch of people tuning into replay as well, for who
Perfect,
like
perfect.
middle of the night or who are coaching right now. And I mean, kind of to like last plug for Lauren, which what I really, really love, Lauren, about your approach, because I have gone and looked for like resources on how to learn more about AI. There's a lot of stuff out there. And I find that a lot of stuff on AI is very often from the technical angle. So you will find like these courses on prompt engineering and like the structure of LLMs. And if you're into that, that's super cool. I'm not techie. And to have Lauren kind of explain it from a non-tech, like very applicable perspective, I find like really, really helpful, because I don't need to learn about in structure of LLMs. I just need to figure out how to put together a blog post and have AI help me do it. So that I find really helpful as well. I'll get you guys the link to
That bot.
the bot, and then check out the link. I will also share the links to the school community, and folks can check out more information about Basecamp. I can speak to Basecamp. I'm one of the students working towards my graduation, hopefully in the next little bit. So, all right.
And feel
We'll
free
see
to
you
DM
guys
me on
in the
Instagram.
next
I love
one.
to just chat.
Oh,
So if you've got questions to reach out there, or in the launch pad if you guys
amazing.
join that.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everyone. Go use AI. Don't be scared.